continue. We are now almost at the beginning of the seventh factor, right mindfulness, but before we move on to the seventh factor, we're going to have a quick look at what is known as sampajanya in Pali here. And if you know the gradual training, that we had a look at here 2 years ago when I was here last, then you have the sense restraint, and after sense restraint comes a passage on clear comprehension. And we'll just have a quick look at that before we move on to the Satipatthana Sutta afterwards. So this is that passage. This is from the Chula Hattipadopama Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya 27, and this is the standard passage on clear comprehension found throughout the suttas. And it goes as follows. He becomes one who acts in full awareness when going forward and returning, who acts in full awareness when looking ahead and looking away, who acts in full awareness when flexing and extending his limbs, who acts in full awareness when wearing his robes and carrying his outer robe and bowl, who acts in full awareness when eating, drinking, consuming food and tasting, who acts in full awareness when defecating and urinating, who acts in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep, waking up, talking and keeping silent. So I want to discuss this passage a little bit just to be absolutely clear what this actually means. And the first thing I want to just talk about briefly is the meaning of this term, sampajanya. It is here translated as full awareness. But the word sampajanya is sampa, sam is the prefix, pajanya is basically the same words as panya, very closely related to panya, to the idea of wisdom and understanding. Right, so there is an aspect of understanding in this particular term. You understand what is going on. You understand your situation. And in particular, all of this is really about understanding whether the things that you are doing are conducive to the practice or not. So the aspect of understanding is very important here. And the more recent translation by Bhikkhu Bodhi is clear awareness. Right, we're moving towards sati here, so there's a clarity about it. Sorry, not clear awareness, clear comprehension, and comprehension is the understanding aspect. And I think that much more captures the idea of sampajanya, clear comprehension, than full awareness. Awareness just means you are aware, but comprehension means there's some degree of wisdom and understanding with that. That's the first one, you act with clear comprehension. And then the second aspect here is that, well, first of all, what does it mean? What does clear comprehension actually mean? And in the commentaries, this is defined as four aspects, this idea of clear comprehension. There's the aspect of purpose, the purpose why you are doing something. Is it serving the purpose? Suitability, is it suitable for what you're trying to achieve? There is the resort, gochara in Pali, and there is the last one, which is like non-delusion. And so these are the four aspects that are talked about in the commentary here. And the first one is to make sure that you are fulfilling the purpose, but you're doing an act which is purposeful. And all of these acts that you see on the page here that we've just been looking at, these are the kind of usual acts that you do in monastic life. Most of this pertains to monastic life. Of course, it is applicable in lay life as well, although perhaps in a slightly different way. So these are the things that we do in monastic life. Especially, it is the things that we do outside of meditation practice. Right? When you don't sit down, you're not watching your breath, you're not doing some formal meditation practice, these are the things you do. So you have here kind of the idea of carrying your outer bowl and robe. Right? This is what you do when you walk into the village and collect alms. Looking away and looking ahead, this is also what you do when you go walk Pindabata. And then you have all the eating aspects, right? Drinking and eating, etc. So this is all about those things that we do outside of formal meditation. So you have to understand these things in terms of their purpose, right? All of these things have a certain purpose. If you are fulfilling that purpose, then you are doing the right thing here. So you're going into the village. The purpose of going into the village on Pindabata is to receive food. and that's why you go into the village. You don't go into the village to look at all the, nice sights or whatever it might be and get kind of excited about something interesting. It's for receiving food that you're going in there. And the suitability. Is this the right time to go into the village? Is this, is there some problem perhaps? Is it a suitable time to do this thing? If it is unsuitable, then you avoid it, because it might give rise to defilements. It might take you in the wrong direction. So this idea of purpose and suitability is basically an understanding that the act you are doing is appropriate. It is in accordance with the Dhamma, accordance with yoniso manasikara. It is not something that will lead you astray and lead you in the wrong direction. Purpose and suitability. And this, to me, these two factors, I think that makes good sense, and I don't have any problems with the commentary when it says that. But when the commentary talks about gochara or resort, the way it defines that is that you're supposed to have your object of meditation in mind at all times. And that is where I'm a little bit skeptical about the commentaries, what it says there, because I'm not sure if that is the best way to practice the Dhamma. There's no evidence from that in the suttas that you're always supposed to have your object of meditation in mind. There's no evidence for that, and it seems to be a commentarial elaboration. And I heard a story recently of a monk who is a very good meditator. He gets very good samadhi, and he said that he had tried this practice of always keeping the object of meditation in mind. And specifically what he did breathing meditation, anapanasati, and so when he was going on arms round, he would watch his breath, right, all through his arms round. And he said he was able to do that all the way through. That's quite a difficult thing to do. You have to have very good samadhi to do that. But he said the problem was that he lost his way, right? So this is kind of the problem. You're so focused on the breath that you actually don't really know where you're going anymore. You can only do one thing at a time properly. And this is a kind of problem that you fall into. And so I must admit, I am skeptical about that commentarial interpretation, that actually this is an aspect of sampajanya, that you always have the meditation object in mind. And the last one about non-delusion essentially means that you are aware that all of these things are just activities. There's no self there. There's activities happening and going through. And of course, at some point in the practice, when we become Aryas, etc., then that is very important. But this is a very high level of sampajanya, and for the vast majority of people, that does not really apply. So the two important ones are purpose and suitability. These are the things that really matter here, as far as I can see here. And then also very briefly, in this whole sequence of things that where we are supposed to have a clear comprehension, one of the things which is a little bit strange, you may have, actually it isn't strange because the way it is translated, but in my opinion the translation may not be quite right, and that is you act in full awareness when walking, standing, sitting, falling asleep and waking up. This is Sutta and Jagarya. So these two words don't actually mean falling asleep and waking up. Sutta means asleep. You are asleep. You are sleeping. And Jagarya means you are awake. So what the translation then becomes is that you act in clear comprehension while asleep and while awake. Right? That is also a bit strange to understand. How can you have full comprehension while you are sleeping? And what is going on here, again, is a translation problem. And the Pali, the form of the Pali, the grammatical form here is a locative form, and the locative form can be translated in different ways. And one way of translating the locative, certainly in this case, is that you act with clear comprehension about or concerning being awake and being asleep, right? So you have clear comprehension about these things. And this is, I think, probably the meaning of all of these acts are locatives all the way through, and it's probably that you have clear comprehension about all of these activities, and that's actually the meaning here. So I would say that to me, it looks like the proper translation should be one who acts with clear comprehension about walking, about standing, about sitting, about sleeping, about being awake, about talking, and about keeping silent. In other words, what that means then is you know the right amount of sleep, right? You get up at the right time. You know the right amount of wakefulness. You know the appropriate amount of talking for the occasion, the appropriate amount of silence. And you understand that in accordance with the purpose of your practice, the purpose of the Dhamma, so it leads in the right direction. It leads you onwards on the path, in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path, essentially. When I look at that, then it makes, at least to me, it makes good sense what this passage is all about. And to understand what this means in a little bit more detail, I have taken a passage from Majjhima Nikaya 2. This is the well-known Sabbasava Sutta. All the defilements, or all the taints. Taints is perhaps a little bit weak translation. Maybe all the defilements would be good. And these passages here are essentially, as far as I can see, about this idea of clear comprehension, because they fit into the gradual training. The Sabbasava Sutta is also about the gradual training, but in a slightly different way, phrased in a different way. But the position of these factors are exactly the same position where sampajanya normally occurs in the gradual training. And that's why I think this is roughly meant to be an expansion on the ordinary formula for sampajanya. So this is what it says, and again, it is mostly for monastics, but it can also be extended into lay practice for those people who are very keen on the practice. So this is how it goes, a small extract from the Sabbasava Sutta. What taints, bhikkhus, should be abandoned by using? Here a bhikkhu, reflecting wisely, uses the robe only for the protection from cold, for the protection from heat, for the protection from contact with gadflies, mosquitoes, wind, the sun, and creeping things, and only for the purpose of concealing the private parts. Wisely reflecting, he uses alms food, neither for amusement nor for intoxication, nor for the sake of physical beauty and attractiveness, but only for the endurance and continuance of this body, for the ending of discomfort, and for the assisting the holy life, considering, thus I shall terminate all feelings without arousing new feelings, and I shall be healthy and blameless, and shall live in comfort. Reflecting wisely, he uses the resting place, the sanasana, only for protection from cold, for protection from heat, for protection from contact with gadflies, mosquitoes, wind, the sun, and creeping things, and only for the purpose of warding off the perils of climate and for enjoying retreat. Reflecting wisely, he uses the medicinal requisites, only for protection from arisen, afflicting feelings and for the benefit of good health. So these are the four standard requisites for monastics, the four parikara, the requisites of robes, alms food, lodging, like a kuti or something like that, and the medicines at the end. And all of these parikaras, these requisites, should be used in such a way that they support the ascetic or monastic life, right? So what does that mean? It means basically they support the middle way. You don't use these things to intoxicate yourself, to have a very nice robe or a big kuti, and if you kind of use these things to kind of indulge yourself, anything like that, or to be proud of it or whatever. But you also don't use so little that you suffer too much. You use sufficiently so you ward off any problems in the world. You find that beautiful middle way again. It's neither for intoxication and indulgence, nor do you use them in such a way that you suffer unnecessarily. And this is why you find a beautiful middle way. And this is what all of this is about, right? You reflecting wisely here is patisankha yoniso. Probably fairly similar to sampajanya in some ways. You reflect wisely about these things. And you can see it's all about avoiding the problems of the world. That's why you use the robe in the right way. And you don't use it for conceit or for, I have this kind of robe, you only have that kind of robe. What you are you are a lesser monk because you don't have as good a robe as I have. That's kind of the wrong way of using a robe. And then we have the same thing for the alms food. You don't use the alms food to intoxicate yourself or for being attractive and for all of these intoxications in the life, but to use it, again, it says at the bottom here, it says to live in comfort, right? Pasu viharati. Pasu means like you are relaxed, you are at ease, you're ending of all the problems, the physical problems in the body, and you don't create new ones by overeating. That's the only thing. The other way, you eat too much, you don't live pasu anymore. So that nice and balanced, even way of using the alms food. And it's exactly the same thing is for the resting place, the sanasana, and exactly the same thing for the medicinal requisite, the gilangpasa. Which is the Sinhala word from Gilana Pachaya in Pali. So here you can see the idea. This is how I understand the idea of sampajanya, right? It's actually very practical. It's directly related to how we live our monastic lives. To follow the middle way, understand that we're using it appropriately. This is what sampajanya is about. So not giving rise to defilements, but actually being a help in reducing the defilements instead. And in a sense you can regard the similar kind of thing in lay life, right? Lay life is a similar kind of thing. You live your life in such a way that you don't kind of give rise to more defilements than necessary, and you kind of hold that kind of balance. You have a sense of yoniso, patisankara yoniso also in lay life. You don't go to places that give rise to too many defilements and do things that give rise to too many problems in life, and then you have a more even kind of life. You obviously cannot do it quite to the extent as a monastic, but the general idea can still be there, perhaps. Okay, then we have the next one, similar kind of idea again. Sorry, first of all the summary paragraph. While taints and vexation and fever might arise in one who does not use the requisites thus, there are no taints, vexation and fevers in one who uses them thus. These are called the taints that should be abandoned by using him. So here the word asava in the suttas is used a little bit differently from ordinary. Here it uses any kind of defilement that might arise, whether it is kamachanda or it is perhaps defilement, mana, conceit or anything like that. Any such defilement is included here, it seems. Okay, next one. What taints bhikkhus should be abandoned by enduring him? Here a bhikkhu reflecting wisely bears cold and heat, hunger and thirst, and contact with gadflies, mosquitoes, wind, the sun and creeping things. He endures ill-spoken, unwelcome words, and arisen bodily feelings that are painful, racking, sharp, piercing, disagreeable, distressing, and menacing to life. While taints, vexations, and fever might arise in one who does not endure such things, there are no taints, vexations, and fever in one who endures them. These are called the taints that should be abandoned by enduring. Sometimes there are problems in life you cannot get rid of them. Even though you have the requisites in the right way, there are always things that will not go according to plan, not be right. And then instead of kind of complaining and giving rise to defilements as a consequence, you understand that sometimes you just have to endure. And sometimes being enduring and being patient is the right way here. And some of the typical things here are like the ill-spoken and unwelcome words, right? How often isn't it that we hear unwelcome words in life? There's always going to be somebody who talks to us in a way that isn't nice. This is just the way the world is. And when you understand that this is the way the world is, then you just shrug your shoulders and you are patient and you endure and you don't worry too much about it. This is one of the things, just that idea, the acceptance that the world has to be this way. The world cannot be in any other way. If you really take that on board, it means you don't get upset, you don't get angry when these things happen, because it is actually unavoidable. Anger is usually a response to wanting to change things. You think you can change things. If you accept that you cannot change something, okay, you just move on, you don't worry about it. Painful feelings of the body, that's another one which is impossible to completely avoid, right? There's always going to be painful feelings in the body. So if you cannot alleviate it by medicine or by whatever it takes, well, again, you kind of just don't worry too much about it. If you change your posture many times, but there are certain pains that are chronic, you cannot get rid of, again, you just allow it to be, and you try to deal with it by understanding that you have to endure this particular type of feeling here. So you have clear comprehension about these things, not allowing them to give rise to defilements and problems in the mind. And then the last one here is what taints bhikkhus should be abandoned by avoiding him. Here a bhikkhu reflecting wisely avoids a wild elephant, a wild horse, a wild bull, a wild dog, a snake, a stump, a bramble patch, a chasm, a cliff, a cesspit, a sewer. Reflecting wisely, he avoids sitting on unsuitable seats, wandering to unsuitable resorts, and associating with bad friends, such as, if he were to do so, wise companions in the holy life might suspect him of evil conduct. While taints, vexations, and fevers might arise in one who does not avoid these things, there are no taints, vexations, and fevers in one who avoids them. These are called the taints that should be abandoned by avoiding. So you don't take too many chances, right? If you live in the jungle, you are careful. You don't kind of walk in the paths of wild elephants. And indeed, there are stories about monks who have been kind of trampled by elephants. And of course, that has pretty bad consequences. And also some of these other things you avoid, you don't take any unnecessary chances in life. And interesting here, there's a slightly translation problem here, where it says that you avoid sitting on unsuitable seats, wandering to unsuitable resorts, and associating with bad friends. All of that, of course, makes sense, right? Unsuitable seats, where every seat that might give rise to some kind of desire, right, with the wrong kind of people, whatever. Unsuitable resorts, bad friends that lead you in the wrong direction. Since if he were to do so, wise companions in the holy life might suspect him of evil conduct. I don't think that's quite right. The point is rather you should avoid those things that the wise companions in the holy life know to be inappropriate. That is really the more appropriate or correct translation. So if your wise companions in the holy life, if you know that they say this is bad, then you avoid that. It's not just that you are trying to avoid censure or avoid blame. This sounds like you're trying to avoid blame, right? But that's not really the point. The point is that these things are considered bad by the wise companions, therefore you don't do it. Okay, so that is very short on clear comprehension and how clear comprehension works in daily life, as I understand it. And this is a nice lead-up to the Satipatthana Sutta, because one of the factors of Satipatthana Sutta is sampajanya, or clear comprehension. But of course, in meditation it is slightly different, because then it has to do with how you are using your mind in meditation practice itself. So now let us move on to right mindfulness. We have now come to the seventh factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. It is getting exciting now. We're coming towards the end, right? The big, kind of the interesting things are really starting to happen now. So far it's a lot of hard work, and now we're beginning to experience some of the pleasant results, the night results of all this work. There are pleasant results all the way, but now they're getting really, really nice and pleasant. So before I talk about this in detail and look at the meaning of right mindfulness, which of course is the four satipatthanas, I'd just like to remind you again, generally speaking, what right mindfulness is about. And remember, we have the Noble Eightfold Path, 8 factors. Factor number 6 is right effort, samma padana or samma vayama. And then the last factor is samadhi, which is the 4 jhanas. And in between those 2 factors, we have right mindfulness. And when you understand that the path is about the gradual purification of the mind, and of course once you get to the jhanas, it is fully purified from the hindrances, right? Samappadana, we are still purifying the mind through the way we think, through the way we act, as we have seen over the past couple of days, using our mind in skillful ways to avoid the defilements. Right? So right mindfulness fits in between those 2 things. It means that as your mind gets purified more and more, there comes a point when it is getting very close to samadhi, but there's still some very subtle defilements left in the mind. And that is the main purpose of satipatthana, is to clear the mind of the last subtle defilements. And we shall see this as we go through the Satipatthana Sutta, that this is indeed the case. There's a very strong emphasis on understanding the defilements in the Satipatthana Sutta, and then abandoning them as a consequence of understanding them. This is one of the main themes of the Satipatthana Sutta, because at this point the defilements are so subtle that very often we don't even know they're there, right? They're kind of beyond our normal understanding. So you have to actually investigate, you have to understand, you have to contemplate, you have to see cause and effect, and as you do that you come to understand these things fully, and that is what enables you to abandon the hindrances completely and then take the mind towards samadhi. So this is, as far as I can see, the main purpose of right mindfulness, the main purpose of satipatthana on the Buddhist path. And some people, sometimes you will hear different things about satipatthana, but if you look at it from the point of view of the Noble Eightfold Path, how satipatthana fits between right effort and right samadhi, that makes very good sense. If you look at it from the point of view of the pancha indriya, the 5 indriyas, right, same thing again. You have virya, then you have mindfulness, sati, and then you have samadhi. Almost exactly the same sequence, right, in the indriyas. If you go to the 7 bojjhangas, you have the sati sambojjhanga, then you have the dhammavicaya sambojjhanga, then you have the virya sambojjhanga after that. And then after that comes the piti, pasadi, samadhi, upekkha. So after that comes all the samadhi bojjhangas, right? And the same thing again, you can see how mindfulness is at the base, the cause for all the samadhi aspects to arise. Dhammavicaya bojjhanga is a little bit like almost part of mindfulness, understanding the states of mind that cause problems and those that lead you towards samadhi. So all of these cases you can see a gradual movement of mindfulness leading to samadhi. Not only in these important sets of dhammas, but you can also see it in some of the suttas, like the Danta Bhumi Sutta, how mindfulness comes first, satipatthana, then you have the jhanas afterwards. Sense restraint, mindfulness, then jhana. You can see it in other places, such as the Satipatthana Sangyutta. You go to the Satipatthana Sangyutta, like the famous the simile of the cook, which you may know, the what is it, sutta number 8 or something in the Satipatthana Sangyutta, the Sutta Sutta is the cook, and the cook. This sutta shows you how, using satipatthana, you abandon the defilements and then enter samadhi. So this is the standard exposition, right? Satipatthana is for the purpose of samadhi. Very important. What does that mean? Does that mean that satipatthana is all about samatha? What does it actually imply? And the answer is no, it doesn't really imply that at all. What it implies is that whatever you do in satipatthana, both samatha and vipassana, is for the purpose of samadhi. So the satipatthana, as you practice that, like everything else on the Buddhist path, it gives rise to 2 things, samatha and vipassana. Samatha and vipassana are the 2 results of practicing the path. And as you practice this path, both of these things come out as you kind of move towards samadhi all the way through. So because the purpose of this is samadhi, it doesn't mean that it's all about samatha. It is still about both samatha and vipassana. Just a short aside. I don't want to just to be clear about that, I think is useful here. So this is right mindfulness, as I understand it, Satipatthana practice. And now I'm going to have a look at the Satipatthana Sutta, which is of course the main way, the main exposition, if you like, of Satipatthana in the suttas. It is described many other places as well, but this is the kind of fullest description of Satipatthana. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do, and this is quite different from how you will normally hear about this discourse, I'm going to take a comparative approach to this discourse. And I talked before about using the suttas in a comparative light, because almost all the suttas, they have parallels in other languages, right? There are Chinese parallels, there are Sanskrit parallels, sometimes Tibetan parallels. And the idea is, when you take all the different parallels together and you compare them, then sometimes you might be able to find out what if there is a more original or earlier version of a particular sutta. Sometimes you can see the suttas in the Pali Canon, something seems to be wrong, right? Something might be missing. I think a classic example is the Chabisodhana Sutta, which is Majjhima 112 or something like that. And Chabisodhana means the sixfold purification, and there seems to be only 5 in there in the Pali. And the commentary says there should be a 6th one, which is missing, and it is this. And then you go to the version in Chinese, and it actually has those 6 factors in the Chinese version. My memory is a bit vague, but that is, I think that is the sutta in which that is the case. So this shows us that sometimes when you use the versions in different languages, you can get sometimes a better understanding of what is happening in the Pali suttas. It gives you a more full view of what is going on here. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring in all these other suttas, which are parallel suttas. There's a couple in Chinese. There is actually maybe more than 2 in Chinese, depending on how you look at it. One in the Madhyama Agama, one in the Kotarika Agama. And you can also look at the Abhidhamma evaluation of mindfulness to also get a more full view sometimes. This is what I will do, and when we do that, we get quite a different understanding of Satipatthana than what we normally have. And this, I think, is quite interesting. So we'll see what comes out of this. So let us begin to have a look at this sutta. So first of all, as usual, I'll go back to the analysis sutta. This is in the Magga Samyutta number 8, Vibhanga, and this is how Satipatthana is defined in that sutta. And what bhikkhus is right mindfulness? Here bhikkhus, a bhikkhu dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating feelings in feelings, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating mind in mind, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating phenomena in phenomena, ardent, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world. This is called right mindfulness. So this is the standard formula for mindfulness that you see in the suttas everywhere, and I will have a look at this now in a little bit of detail, just to be clear about what this is all about. So we start off first of all, he dwells contemplating the body in the body. The first word here, which is perhaps interesting, is this idea of contemplating, which is anupassana in Pali. And anupassana means something like seeing along with, right? You are watching something, you are seeing things, trying to see what actually it is like. So it is a seeing along with something. This doesn't just mean passive awareness, sometimes it can also mean an active use of the mind, so it has a little bit broader than just seeing along with. But it is roughly equivalent to the English word contemplating. You are watching something, right? Watching it, or even bringing something to mind as an image, especially in the Kayanupassana, the first part of the Satipatthana Sutta, the contemplation of the body. It is more an active imagination of something here. So you contemplate, and I think contemplating is a good word, and you contemplate the body in the body here. And this again is described in the commentaries in a certain way, but my preferred understanding of this, and this is what is found at the end of the Anapanasati Sutta. At the end of the Anapanasati Sutta, it says that the breath is called a body because it is a certain body among bodies. Right? So the breath is a certain body. And this is a very important point, because it shows us the way the word body is used in Pali. It is a very broad word, and what it really means is an aggregate of phenomena that form a whole. Like the word aggregate in English, right? Or the word group. It's a group of phenomena that forms a particular group. So the breath body is just the body of all, the group of all breaths, right? All breaths belong to a group called the breath group, and this is what is meant here by the breath being a body. It's a particular body among other types of bodies, in this case in the body, in the physical body. So it's a grouping of phenomena within the physical body. That is what the breath is. And this is how I like to understand this, simply because it fits with the way the ending of the Anapanasati Sutta explains this, a certain type, a certain group of phenomena within the physical body. And then when you look at the various types of contemplations we're supposed to do in the Kayanupassana, that fits quite well. For example, the 32 parts of the body, right? That is a group of phenomena. It's a certain body within the physical body here. And the other things also can be regarded in that way here. But I won't go into that now, because I want to look at which of these contemplations are important later on here. So this is the first thing, right? It's actually quite simple. Contemplating the body in the body could be translated as he dwells contemplating certain aspects of the body. That is one way of translating this. He dwells contemplating certain aspects of the body, or certain aspects in the body. It makes it more easy to understand. Otherwise, it's a bit vague. What does it mean, the body in the body? That's the first one. The next one here is ardent. The word ardent is atapi in Pali. It is related to the word virya, not linguistically, but in terms of how it is used. Virya meaning energy. So here you are energetic, right? There's a certain amount of energy in the mind. You're applying yourself in a good way. Maybe not quite as high as energy, but roughly ballpark the same meaning here. Then you are clearly comprehending. You have sampajanya, right? We've just been talking about sampajanya before, or sampajano, I think it is here. Sampajanya being a slightly different, same word, but slightly different usage. So we looked at sampajanya before. It means you comprehend what you're doing. You're living your life in such a way that it doesn't give rise to defilements. You understand the middle path in all your activities in ordinary life. Now here, sampajanya is here related to meditation practice. Satipatthana, right mindfulness, could be translated as meditation, because it's really about meditation practice. Bhavana, right? So here, clear comprehension means, again, remember we're talking about suitability and purpose and suitability. You know that you are contemplating in such a way that it fulfills the purpose, and it is suitable to fulfilling that purpose that you're trying to achieve. So when you're watching the body in such a way that it actually leads in the right direction. You're contemplating the 31 parts. It actually reduces any defilements you have in the mind. It doesn't increase the defilements. You have clear comprehension that you're fulfilling the purpose of the practice. And the same thing all the way through the Satipatthana Sutta. You understand that you actually are, you know, you have clear comprehension as to what is going on, so that you can guide yourself. If you lose the path slightly, you go in the wrong direction, you can guide yourself in the right way here. Right? That is basically, as I understand here, clear comprehension. He is sampajano. And then the last one here, which is interesting, he is mindful, satima. Right, so the word mindfulness is actually included in the Satipatthana itself. This is sammasati, and inside sammasati you have mindful. And so the point here, all of these words that we are seeing here, these are words that describe the person who is contemplating. Right, that describe what your mind state is like, that describe how this contemplation is happening. It is happening with energy, atapi. It is happening with clear comprehension, sampajano. It is happening with mindfulness. You are mindful while you are doing this. Right, so what that means is that before you can do Satipatthana, you have to establish mindfulness. This is a practice that happens with mindfulness, not without it. And that is quite significant. Sometimes Satipatthana, the four Satipatthanas are translated as the four foundations of mindfulness. Now, if you translate it as the foundation of mindfulness, it sounds like it is the thing on which mindfulness is developed. Right? It is the foundation, it is the base of mindfulness, is the thing which gives rise to mindfulness. But actually no, because mindfulness already has to be there. So instead of calling it the foundation of mindfulness, it is actually about how we use mindfulness, using mindfulness in the right way. So for that reason, Satipatthana, which is a compound of sati and upatthana. Upatthana is related to the word upataka. Upataka means like an attendant, right? Like Venerable Ananda was the upataka of the Buddha. So it actually means attendant. It means attending. The four attendings with mindfulness. The four places you attend with mindfulness. Or if you like, you can even call it the four focuses of mindfulness. So the four attendings of mindfulness, or the four focuses of mindfulness, to me is a good translation. Four establishings of mindfulness also, okay. Four focuses of mindfulness, the four foundations of mindfulness I do not think is so good. And I think that translation has fallen out of use recently. It is not really being used anymore. And the four establishings of mindfulness is now the favorite. So this gives us some idea of Satipatthana, what it means. The four attendings with mindfulness. You're attending to four places, the four focuses of mindfulness, the four areas where you're focusing. So mindfulness is already there. This is about how we use that mindfulness. And then having removed covetousness and displeasure in regard to the world, vinaya, loke, abhijja, domanassa. Right? Vinaya, having abandoned, having removed covetousness and displeasure, abhijja, domanassa. Abhijja means is a synonym for kamachanda. It means having desire in the regard to the five senses. Displeasure here is domanassa, is any kind of negative mind state, right? Where you feel kind of pain, or you feel disappointment, the kind of things where you have a sensory impact and you are dissatisfied with that sensory impact, and you feel a dislike for it. And that's why displeasure here, I think, is quite a good translation. Covetousness, I think, is perhaps a bit too narrow. It's about desire and displeasure, or about desire and displeasure in regard to the world is quite a good translation. It's about liking and disliking. It's the same thing we saw before when I was looking at the sense restraint formula. The sense restraint formula also uses exactly the same words, abhijja and domanassa. Right? So you restrain the senses. This is what we're talking about, using wisdom to restrain the senses from liking and disliking, from desire and aversion to arise in the mind. That is what you are stopping here. And this is crucial, and this is an important connection between sammapadana and sammasati. In the sammapadana formula, we use sense restraint to stop abhijja, domanassa from arising. Right? That's what it specifically says. We stop liking and disliking from arising. We stop desire and aversion from arising. This is what you do. This is what the sense restraint formula is all about, the sammapadana.
And of course, if that is successful, then when we come to the Satipatthana, you have having abandoned that liking and disliking, having abandoned that desire and aversion. It follows on as a consequence, right? So you can see the movement there from Sammapadana to Sammasati. In one, you do the job, and then when you get to the other one, you have done that, having removed this thing here. So you have, at this stage, you have removed this. So in other words, you don't have any strong liking and disliking, any strong desire and aversion at this point, because it has been abandoned previously. In regard to the world, this is loke, and the word loke in Pali is very similar to the idea of world in English. It has a large number of meanings. You know, we say in English we can use the world, can mean like the earth, right? It can mean all of humanity. It can mean the universe, depending on how you use that word. And it's exactly the same in Pali. It can have many different meanings depending on the context. And here, the context seems to suggest that the world means the world of the five senses. It is specifically said to mean that in other places, so that is certainly an acceptable interpretation. The world of the five senses, right? Kama, the world of Kama, the Kamavachara realm, the realm of the five senses. That is where you have no liking and no disliking, no desire and no aversion. So, there you are. So, of course, the whole point here is that these things go together. If you have abandoned liking and disliking, that's why you have mindfulness, right? Because you have abandoned the movement of the mind, which kind of pushes the mind into the future, into the past, thinking about things, desiring things. But because you have abandoned that, that is precisely why mindfulness has arisen. So these things come together. Now, this does not mean that all the five hindrances have been completely abandoned yet. There are still, I would say, subtle remnants of the five hindrances left in the mind. And this is the purpose then for Satipatthana. The purpose of it is to abandon the remainder of these five hindrances. Very, very subtle aspects of the hindrance are still there, and this is like the coarser aspects relating to what has been the work you have done in Sammapadana just previously here. So now you have some idea what is going on here, right? So he dwells contemplating a certain aspect in the body, and while he does that, he is energetic. He clearly comprehends what he is doing. He is mindful, and he has abandoned liking and disliking, desire and aversion in regard to the sensory world, in regard to sensuality. So that is how I might translate that, and hopefully that discussion will have given a little bit of clarity as to what is going on there. It's a lot of detail I have just been giving, but I hope you don't mind, and hope you find that interesting here. So let's have a quick look at the three other Satipatthanas. So this is the one, now comes the one on feelings. So here you dwell contemplating feelings in feelings. Vedanasu Vedananupassi, I think it is. And again, it's the same idea that you are contemplating certain feelings among all feelings, right? Certain feelings, and we will see that later on, you're focusing on certain feelings among all possible feelings. So you could say that he dwells contemplating certain feelings. That would be perfectly acceptable in this case. And again, while being energetic, while clearly comprehending, being mindful, and having abandoned desire and aversion in regard to the sensory world. He dwells contemplating mind in mind, chitte chittanupassi. Mind includes the various types of mind states, right? The different types of mind states is called mind in Pali. So this could be translated as he dwells contemplating certain mind qualities, right? Certain qualities of mind. Energetic, clearly comprehending, understanding what's going on, mindful after removing desire and aversion in regard to the sensory world. Last one, he dwells contemplating phenomena. This is dhamme sudhammanupassi. Certain phenomena among phenomena. And this one is the most difficult one to translate, because it really depends on how the last section of the Satipatthana Sutta is considered, which things are supposed to be included or not. So if we include all the various sections that are found in the Pali version, then something like phenomena might be a good translation. But if we try to narrow it down and look at what is perhaps in common between the various different versions of the Satipatthana Sutta, then one translation which one of my monastic colleagues uses is principles, right? Principles meaning in this case, principles of causality. You're contemplating causality in this particular case. And why is that? Because when you come to the last section of Satipatthana, it is all about understanding the hindrances, how they arise, what is the cause for their arising, what is the cause for their abandoning, what is the cause for them being abandoned in the future, and all these kind of things. So for that, it is what we're understanding are kind of principles of nature, principles of natural law, of causality. That is essentially what Dhamma might refer to in this last one. So he dwells contemplating certain principles or certain natural phenomena. Again, energetic, clearly comprehending, mindful, having removed desire and aversion in regard to the sensory world. This is called right mindfulness. So here you have the right mindfulness, and it is again you have four aspects here of that right mindfulness, and as we shall see later on in the Anapanasati Sutta, there is a natural progression. There's always a natural progression in Buddhism. Everything, every sequence has a meaning here too, and there's a natural progression here from beginning with abandoning some of the more coarser defilements, and then experiencing more and more refined states and contemplating these more and more refined states as we move towards samadhi. This is what this is all really about. It's a gradual movement of the mind, and this comes out much more clearly when we see the Anapanasati Sutta later on. So that is the short summary of Satipatthana, and maybe that is a good place to stop. If we move on now, I'm worried that we kind of get into things too much because it's getting already quite late. Yeah, I think I will just maybe stop there, and then we can continue from there on tomorrow morning, because otherwise I might get into too much details in the sutta itself. So that's all for now, and we'll see you again this evening.